Hello, welcome to the seventh video in the series on certain topics for the UGCNET and such other exams. I'm focusing on technology, I'm focusing on ICT and research and current affairs instead of going into those parts which are unchanged and which you can go through on your own, which you'll have to go through on your own. So, yesterday I talked about knowledge economy to some extent. Today I'd like to take up another concept which is called appropriation. And we'll look at how we can find out different things about this idea, carrying on from what we've been doing. We talked about knowledge economy and consumerism yesterday, for example, and I said that you could start with a primer on knowledge economy. So I'll make my searches more and more specific. Creation, search. So what I've searched here is I've combined certain things, and appropriation research the root ideas traveling from one dynasty to another. I've written dynasty, one kingdom, region to another, and this is the kind of thing we are looking at. AI output coming as usual. I don't want that. Far from home, traveling the Silk Roads from an African king to Chinese princess to a Chinese princess, meet fascinating figures whose stories are forever entwined with the Silk Roads. Case study in this is exposed successful Silk Road seal transnational nomination inscribed to China. That's a good place to start. So intellectual and cultural exchange taking place in cities along the Silk Roads, many of which were developed into hubs of cultural learning, science, arts, and literature, as well as crafts and technologies were thus shared and disseminated into societies along the length of these routes. And in this way, languages, religions, and cultures developed and influenced one another. This reminds me, technology of big guns. It is there in GMAT. It is there in other sources. So GMAT question. That reminds me of the question, by the way. And I can't find it really. Point is, history of technology of big guns. So if you read about weapons technology, you'll read about which ideas went from one place to another. And today we are talking about nuclear arms race and non-proliferation treaty. The point being, it's not just machine guns, it's not just cannons. It is about, this is very much in the recent past. And today we are looking at something like that. I've not been reading about this. I don't know the words for this. I've one of the points I've made in the presentation here, the languagefellow.com/downloads, is that you have to have the vocabulary. So, in order to get the vocabulary, you can, as you can see, this is DSLR is you're probably aware of it. It's common enough today, and this is for people video shooting, photographing with drones. This is a military website. DTIC, I don't know what that is. This is the first time I'm coming across this. This one's acquisition acronyms and terms. We can have a look. The idea that I'm trying to convey is that this is something that's continuing from centuries, and these two pages, New Scientist, a timeline, and this UNESCO post, that would be a good starting point to acquaint yourself with what a bird's eye view would be, so to speak. So if you look at this time, for example, this is important, and this is one of the things I've mentioned in the slides as well. Given is the name. And if you want a series, Great Books of the West World, that's a series you want to study. Also, now that I've mentioned this, you'll find it on Wiktionary, for example, and on other such hosting facilities, let's call it. The first 13 editions of Britannica are all in the public domain. You can see that here, right? And you can find out more. Why would you need such a thing? That's where LLMs are picking up their information from. That's the whole point. No, it doesn't go through an encyclopedia and parse it and gives you a dictionary entry, an encyclopedia entry. It does rephrasing, and rephrasing is the way it's been said over and over and continues to add redundancy. And I could talk about Mimasa, and that is a way of arguing. Mimasa, reflection, critical investigation, refers to traditional contemplation, which is Wikipedia is not the source I'd go to. Britannica would be from particular lens. So what source do I look at? What I can do is go for advanced search, go for change of region from any region to India in particular, and check if I'm getting something. That's something new that I've discovered. I may have come across it and forgotten it. I don't know. I have not come across everything that there is on the internet. Everything there is on the internet, but no, it doesn't look like it's going to work. Also, possible that the site may not be available the way I have my network and connection to my network configured. Point being, let's look at this. I don't know. Yes, because I don't have anything else. Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Yes, I could go through these things. Two of the six divisions of Orthodox Hindu philosophy. The idea is that you're going through some topic by reflecting on it, and that is a way of treating a topic. That is history of the fall and the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Given that's what you want to read. You will want to know these things if you want to understand what's going on when you're talking about drone technology. Technology transfer is the phrase. Technology transfer. So one country allows another country to use its design. That's what you'd say, for example. This applies to any kind of technology. It doesn't have to be applies to electronics, chips, VLSI, technology, transfer, Taiwan. These are some strands you can spend time on while trying to find out more about how you would compare how things happened in the past and how they happen today. Canon's Akbar, if you read Indian history, you'll find it there. And that's why I said, I mean, it was during this time that these things came to being. History of 12th century to modern times. That's where, again, China, development of explosive devices, pioneers, technology. That was the that's from the GMAT question. I'm giving you all of this. These particular things: explosive devices and Chinese inventions and gunpowder. Exactly, gunpowder. History. So I all I have to do is GMAT official guide and find a question, find that question and give it to you. It's not if I wanted to point you there, I could have done that. Again, I mentioned bibliographies of work on Homer. That's what it said, right? And we looked at the Oxford bibliographies, and there can be Loeb. Yeah, this is something famous. You probably Loeb. Please find the pronunciation. I'm not getting to that. It's easy enough. You can play it and Loeb and Loeb, and both are correct. This was like great books of the Western world. So, history of development of gunpowder, China. Yes, this is again the GMAT question that I'm talking about. So, history of cannons, history of these things. So, nuclear arms race and NPT, non-proliferation treaty, and there's a lot around it. This is a way to start what's going on in the world as far as weapons technology is concerned. This is about a particular topic, timeline of development of the concept of how can we talk about something that's been an inquiry that's been going on since time immemorial, and I can safely it's termed as timeline of psychology. Now, I must inform you that psychology as a discipline emerged very recently as an academic discipline emerged. For example, 1826, first time women entered university. Okay, why do I have 1826 as the date? The book is you could start here. It'll have in the first chapter that has history of what was happening and how English literature. I mean, English literature was not taught at universities. What they study was classics, and it has to do with academic disciplines coming up in the way they've come up in the last 150 to 200 years now. So, late 19th century, and yes, I wouldn't get into this, but I'm talking about the psyche. I'm not talking about psychology. Psychology is the everything that has logy after it. That's 150 to 200 years ago, if I'm not grossly mistaken. You can see Freud there. Yeah, that's Freud. Already mentioned Freud. So, history of ideas. you can see that Greek scriptures have it. And the question comes up: what's mythology? What's mythology? So mythology versus retractions. That's bold. That's really really strong. But let's see what AI has to say about it. The thing is, both the domains are speculative. Both the domains are speculative. This is getting into, I mean, and fictional. What's fictional, and what's realized, what's theoretical. That's the kind of, not AI. I'm not talking AI about. I'm not talking about what AI has to say about any of this. You'd be looking at things like uh, philosophical debates on such matters. So because the way it is organized, there is non-fiction having fiction as its branch. The way knowledge is, see, it says it's made up divide, fiction versus non-fiction. English literature's made up divide, and that's what I'm talking about. Back to weapons technology or Silk Road or what I started with, appropriation. Let's actually read from here. It's open access, which is good news. Moves far beyond intertextuality and introduces ideas of active critical commentary, of creative reinterpretation, and of writing back to the original, often defined in terms of hostile takeover or position. Both the theory and practice of appropriation have been informed by the activist scholarship of post-colonialism, post-structuralism, feminism, and queer theory. Artistic responses can be understood as products of specific cultural politics and moments, and as informed responses to perceived injustices and asymmetries of power. The empowering aspects of revisionary writing that has seen, for example, fairy tales reclaimed for female protagonists or voices to return to silence, or marginalized individuals and communities through reconceived plots and the provision of alternative point of view, provide a predominantly positive history. There are, however, aspects of borrowing and appropriation that are more problematic, raising ethical questions about who has the right to speak for or on behalf of others, or indeed to access and potentially rewrite cultural heritage. This is the beat. This is the bit I'm talking about. Okay, this is the bit that I have wanted to. I've already mentioned who got shut down. I've already mentioned Burger in Pune case, lawsuits against AI companies. These are three examples. These are three types, you could say. Okay, so the other day I was looking at startups rate of success, our world in data. Startups tension rate, how would you put it? Life cycle, how many remain after starting out, 10 years, 20 years, visualization, something like that. That's new businesses, not necessarily startups. See, but this does give you an idea. This is for new businesses. Imagine how it would be with startups. So, if you read about these things, you'll come across such statistics. Here, you have answers from. So, I don't want to use answers from AI, but you could go through these things. So, um, there's mergers and acquisitions. There is so many. I mean, so many examples. WhatsApp is one. You could think of them on your own, and this is something you want to be aware of. That's related to intellectual property lawsuits, Indian firms versus international organizations. You could find out more about these things. So when we are talking about appropriation, we are talking about this particular idea. It is it's problematic. There are, however, aspects of borrowing and appropriation that are more problematic, raising ethical questions about who has the right to speak for or on behalf of others, or indeed indeed to access and potentially rewrite cultural heritage. So, as you can see, can an outsider, allow me to use the term outsider, how should I put it? There's also words that can go there. The internal affairs of a political entity. You could say interfere, you could say interfere with, interfere in, and you could say mediate, you could say so many things. Of course, you will have. I won't. I won't say any more than that. Okay, I've already given you an idea. So, can an outsider interfere, mediate, and so on? Internal affairs of a political entity. It's very clear what I'm trying to point you to towards. So, IP lawsuits, there'll be history. Tata Sons versus Greenpeace International. High Court really dismissed an application for an interim injunction requested by Tata, one of the largest companies, against Greenpeace. What was the case? Made malicious and defamatory statements through the creation of a video game titled Turtle vs. Tata, in which the company's involvement in an industrial project and its negative impact on the nesting and breeding of fallen red turtles was criticized. Following the Bonner rule, the court held that granting an injunction in defamation cases was exceptional. Just a moment. Great. So you have to know about these things because this is what appropriation, when we are talking about this part in this entry, encompasses. This is not just about one writer stealing from another or one playhouse stealing from another. This is a much more expansive, much broader area. And I could talk about Green complaining against Shakespeare. So that's a famous example when you're discussing literature, and that's putting it very crudely, but yes, this this did happen, and that's different. This is going into directions I didn't want to. So players at Elizabethan playhouses memorizing lines and so on. So you could find out more again and copying these, and a lot of, you could talk about piracy or however it's been described, and however people like to describe these things today, but that's the idea. I'm talking about the time Shakespeare wrote his plays and they were performed and so on. And then there are things like this. We're talking about copyright issues with artificial intelligence and so on. Indian media seek to join lawsuit against OpenAI chatbot. That's from almost a year ago. Landmark IP rulings every foreign business should know, 7 months ago. Top 5 copyright cases of 2019 in India. Again, this is coming from different sources, and you want to look at what source that you want to follow. And Center for European Policy Analysis. So this is about think tanks, CEPA, think tank. Leading think tank, okay. And you could talk about, I have already mentioned this. Factual reporting high, so you can trust it for information. And right center bias is what it says for this organization. And I am not endorsing any of this, but I'm just showing you this is a start. I'm just showing you how you can. So, for example, evaluating sources. That's the heading under which we put all of these things. So I've already included this, for example. Yeah. Two examples here, right? So you have to follow these things, you have to know about these things, and You have to be able to, first of all, you have to be aware of these things. If you don't know what's going on, AI unreliable in identifying retracted research papers, says study. Should not be used to weed out retracted literature. A study of 21 chatbots concluded. So many things. Springer Nature. So these are some of the biggest names. Springer Nature and Elsevier and so on. This is a name I yes I recognize this name anyway. But you can see that this is what the state of affairs is. So artificial intelligence and retracted science. Retracted science. That's how it's put, right? And it's from 2024, 2025. AI models are using material from retracted scientific papers. So you have to be aware of these things. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to know what is involved, and you have to know if the maths is being accounted for. You can put it like that. And once you start reading all of this, you will come across a lot of things that will surprise you. That are bound to surprise you. I will not say more than that here for obvious reasons, but this is again. I've had a very clear position. I've said this in the video before. I'm saying it again. Post colonialism and all of that, I could be very hard and say things outright. So far, I have not. So far, I've avoided all of that. But these questions are questions about what's happening internally in a political entity. So this is the kind of questions that you're looking at, and as you can see, you have to be very well informed, and you have to be very cautious, and you have to first of all guard yourself against things that will be said, that will come against you when you start talking about any and all of this. So you can definitely imagine. I've already given you conflicts. So something like conflicts to watch in 2026, and there's so much that can be. I mean, this is not just this is particular to we are talking about things in, I mean, relation to India, and I'm sure you can think of a lot of things that I'm not talking about here. But yeah, as you can see, let's go through the last of it. There has been a debate in the arena of intercultural performance about the right of Western theater directors to embed aspects of Asian culture in their work, and in a number of highly controversial examples, the right of white artists to access the cultural references of First Nation, Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities has been contested, leading in extreme cases to agreed destruction of artworks. The concept of cultural appropriation poses important questions about the availability of art forms across cultural boundaries, about issues of access and inclusion, but in turn demands approaches that perform cultural sensitivity and respect the question of provenance as well as intergenerational cross-cultural justice. So this is something I will leave for you to consider. And I will say that the questions start, as far as Western philosophy is concerned, Plato on poets, Plato on the utility of the arts. And this is why would I start from here? Why would I not talk about things as they exist today? I would do that because message gets corrupted as it is passed down the centuries. That is one thing to think about. And then you're talking about Shruti versus Smriti. That's Indian scriptures. Again, I'm talking about scriptures all the time, you see. So, such are the considerations, and you have to inform yourself. You have to keep yourself informed, and you have to ensure that you're talking about things that you think, you believe is meant by terms such as appropriation, for example. I have highlighted this here. So, again, this is getting into aspects that one may or may not want to get into. Further, you're talking about UGCNET, or you're talking about exams in India, you're talking about concerns specific to India. So that's one thing I have to say about all of this. Regarding William Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, or any of how do ideas travel? That is the question. So, zero invention. So, I came across the Mayans, and then the Indian mathematicians coming up with the concept, and earliest recorded use of zero is centuries older than. So this is what these things are about, and that's what's involved. Okay, that's what's involved. It says plastic surgery was developed by Sushrut. I mean, if you remember, we had a chapter, Sushrut, chapter CBSE. So that is the kind of thing, and we are looking at some very sensitive issues here. Okay, and that's all I'll say, and leave it there. Okay, now when you're talking about appropriation, you're looking at this particular article from a particular resource, and I would tell you to go through various sources. So consilience is one of the things I've been talking about, and cultural appropriation. Wikipedia ultimately is coming from these reference sources. So Oxford Research Encyclopedia of Literature, and self-authorizing the consumption of cultural difference. This is a line of reasoning. That is just an example, but colonizing, decolonizing, post-colonial, colonial, all of those things, it is best that you form your opinion, and it is best that you read or find out more rather than express yourself. That's something I can say without landing myself into situations which I may not want myself in. Genuine cultural, yeah, that's, see, different perceptions of cultural appropriation. So many things, and content appropriation, that's what it says here. Again, I would say this depends also on, depends also on words mean things. The swaddle, I don't know what that is. GQ India on cultural appropriation, JLF International Jaipur Literary Festival, I guess. The point being, as I said, hermeneutics is whose prerogative, and it's getting into very sensitive issues and it's getting into sticky stuff. That is the least I can say, and there's so much to find out. I'd invite you to have a look at these things every week or so, every week, 2 times a week, so or so. Research starters. That's the kind of resource you want to use, but again, make sure you're not going for spoon feeding, because something which is supposed to be found by actually going through bibliographies, and so it'll be so hidden. It'll be, won't be there if it's not serving some purposes and so on, to say it in couch terms, veiled terms. What's in focus will have very good reasons to be in focus. That's the idea. For this video, I think that's it, and I'll continue with this and the other topics I've been talking about in the upcoming work. Thank you for your time. Stay tuned.